600,000 men cross a river at dawn. The largest army Europe has ever assembled moves east. Boots pound the ground, cannons roll, horses fill the air with the smell of iron and sweat. Flags catch the wind above a column that stretches beyond the horizon. This is June 1812. Napoleon Bonaparte commands the most powerful military machine in the history of the Western world. He has crushed Austria, he has humiliated Prussia, he has bent Spain, he has redrawn the map of Europe with a sword. No army has stopped him, no winter has touched him, no disease has slowed him. The man is a force of nature wrapped in grey wool. You know what happens next. You know that army never comes home. You know the story. You have heard it since school. Napoleon marched into Russia. The Russians burned their own land. The winter came. The snow fell. General Winter rose from the frozen earth and swallowed the Grand Armée whole. 600,000 men went in. A few thousand stumbled out. Napoleon's empire cracked and never recovered. You know the myth. You do not know the truth. Because the truth is colder than any Russian winter. The truth does not wait for October. The truth does not need frost. The truth moves on 8 legs, lives in the seams of a wool coat, and carries something invisible and lethal inside its body. The truth was already killing Napoleon's soldiers before a single snowflake touched Russian soil. The question is not why Napoleon lost in the winter. The question is why the Grand Armée was already a dying army in the summer. And the answer, the one that changes everything, has been hiding in plain sight for 200 years. Poland, June 24, 1812. The Niemen River is wide and cold and fast. Napoleon watches from the eastern bank as his columns cross on 3 pontoon bridges. He watches for 3 days. The crossing takes 3 days because the army is that large. The central force alone numbers 265,000 men. The full invasion force, with flanking columns and support units, reaches 600,000. Some historians put the number higher. This is not an army. This is a migration. This is a nation in motion. Napoleon's soldiers come from everywhere. France, of course, but also Poland, Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Croatia, the Netherlands, Switzerland. 20 nationalities march under the imperial eagle. They carry different languages, different foods, different immune histories, and they all carry the same lice. This detail matters. Remember this detail. The Grand Armée is the most sophisticated military organization of its age. Napoleon has spent years perfecting it. The core system allows independent movement. Supply depots are planned across Prussia and Poland. Commissary officers have calculated caloric needs. Veterinarians travel with the cavalry. Surgeons ride near the vanguard. On paper, this army cannot be destroyed by logistics. On paper. The official story that comes down through 2 centuries sounds simple and satisfying. Napoleon marched east. The Russians refused to fight. They retreated. They burned crops and villages. They left nothing for the French to eat. Napoleon reached Moscow in September, found it in flames, waited weeks for a surrender that never came, and then turned back west into the killing cold. The winter did the rest. This version of events is not wrong. It is just radically incomplete. Because while Napoleon's generals were studying Russian maps and Russian supply lines, something was already studying the French army from within. Something was already moving through the camps. Something was already selecting its first victims. The army crosses the Niemen in late June. The weather is mild. The mood is confident. The soldiers march 20, sometimes 30 kilometers a day. They have fought worse. They have won against worse. But 1 month later, the army is already 80,000 men smaller. Not from battle, not from cold, not from the Cossack raids that hit the flanks and disappear into the steppe, from disease. 80,000 soldiers gone before Napoleon has even reached Smolensk, before the first major engagement, before the first snow, before anyone writes the word winter in a dispatch, and almost no one notices, or no one wants to notice. There is a force operating inside the Grand Armée that Napoleon cannot see, cannot command, and cannot defeat. And it has been with him since the beginning, packed into the collars and cuffs and waistbands of 600,000 men, waiting for exactly these conditions. Crowding, heat, exhaustion, contaminated water, insufficient food, the conditions of a long march in summer, the conditions of June 1812. Something terrible is already moving through the army. And nobody, not Napoleon, not his marshals, not his surgeons, understands yet what they are truly facing. Vilna, July 1812. The city falls to Napoleon without a fight. The French army enters streets that still smell of Russian burning, papers, supplies, anything useful destroyed before retreat. Napoleon sets up his command in the governor's palace. He expects to be here for days. He stays for 18 days in Vilna, and every day more men arrive sick. The roads behind the vanguard are filling with stragglers, men sitting against trees, men lying in ditches, men whose skin has turned the color of old parchment, men shaking so hard their teeth crack, men with rashes spreading across their chests and arms and necks. The regimental surgeons know this pattern. They have seen it in campaigns before, in the crowded camps of Egypt, in the fever wards of Santo Domingo, on the disease-soaked roads of Spain. They recognize the high fever, the violent headache, the confusion, the rash. They call it typhus. The word comes from the Greek. Typhus, haze, smoke, the mental fog that descends on the sick and does not lift. A soldier wakes up one morning with a pounding headache and an aching back. He thinks he is pushed too hard. He drinks water, he rests, he wakes up the next day worse. The fever climbs. 40 degrees Celsius, 41. His eyes become sensitive to light. He cannot think clearly. By day 5, a rash blooms across his torso, red spots that do not blanch when pressed. By day 10, many are dead. Rickettsia prowazeki is the name of the invisible killer, a bacterium so small it cannot survive outside a living host. It travels from body to body on a single vector, pediculus humanus corporis, the human body louse. The louse itself does not inject the bacterium. The mechanism is even more brutal than a bite. The infected louse defecates on human skin while feeding. The host scratches, because lice bites itch intensely, and rubs the infected feces into the bite wound. The bacterium enters the bloodstream. The clock begins. Now consider the army. 600,000 men sleeping in close quarters, in barns, in ditches, in cramped villages, changing clothes rarely, bathing almost never, each man sharing his sleeping space and his lice with the men on either side of him. The louse population grows exponentially in these conditions. One infected soldier arrives, his lice feed, his lice move. Within days, his entire unit carries the vector. Within weeks, the vector is in every regiment that passed through the same camps, the same roads, the same water sources. The disease spreads faster than cavalry. By July 25th, Napoleon's Central Army has shrunk from 265,000 to 185,000. Not from the battles that haven't happened yet. From disease and desertion, yes, but disease is the primary driver. The hospitals at Vilna are overwhelmed. Polish doctors work alongside French surgeons in corridors packed with bodies that radiate heat like furnaces. There is not enough quinine. There is not enough water. There is not enough of anything. Napoleon asks for reports. He receives numbers. The numbers do not fully convey the reality, because the reality is too catastrophic to convey without triggering panic. So the numbers are softened. The dispatches use careful language. Fatigued soldiers, campaign fever, stomach ailments. The truth is that a biological engine is dismantling the Grand Armée from the inside, and it has barely started. By August 25th, 2 months into the campaign, Napoleon's Central Army is down to 160,000 men from its original 265,000. 105,000 soldiers lost before the Battle of Borodino, before the bloodiest single day of the entire Napoleonic Wars. 2 weeks after that, typhus and exhaustion pushed the number down further, to 130,000. The army that crosses into Russia with drums and flags and the confidence of 15 years of victory is hemorrhaging men at a rate that no battle could explain. The Russians have barely fought. The ground is not frozen. The temperature is summer warm. And yet something is killing Napoleon's soldiers at a pace that stuns even the survivors who witness it. But what almost no one understands, even now, centuries later, is that typhus is only part of the story. The full biological catastrophe is far more complex, far more lethal, and far more modern in its implications than any single pathogen. Because in 2025, scientists open a mass grave in Vilnius and extract DNA from the teeth of Napoleonic soldiers. And what they find changes everything that historians thought they knew. The horror is even bigger than the horror we already knew. Vilnius, Lithuania, not 1812. October 2025. Scientists from the Institut Pasteur and partner institutions sit in a laboratory with vials containing ancient DNA extracted from the teeth of 13 soldiers. Men who died in December 1812. Men buried in a mass grave discovered beneath a construction site in the 1990s. Men who carried their diseases into death and preserved them unknowingly in the enamel and pulp of their molars for 213 years. The sequencing results confirm typhus. They confirm trench fever, another louse-borne disease. Then the results show something no one expected. Paratyphoid fever, a different pathogen. Salmonella enterica paratyphi C. A bacterial infection that attacks the digestive system, causes sustained high fever, and in malnourished, exhausted soldiers marching through contaminated water sources, kills with terrifying efficiency. And louse-borne relapsing fever. Borrelia recurrentis, a spirochete bacterium also carried by body lice, causing cyclical fever spikes. The temperature drops, the soldier believes he is recovering, then it surges again, higher than before. Again and again, until the body simply gives out. 4 diseases, not one. All sharing similar symptoms: crushing headache, violent fever, muscle pain, extreme exhaustion. All spreading through the same vector, the body louse, or through contaminated water and food. All attacking simultaneously in an army that has no clean water, no adequate food, and no real shelter on a summer march across the plains of Western Russia. Now go back to August 1812. Borodino, September 7th. Napoleon finally has his battle. The Russian army turns to fight at a village called Borodino, 70 miles west of Moscow. The battle begins at dawn. It ends at nightfall. Approximately 70,000 men die or are wounded in a single day, making it one of the bloodiest single-day battles in all of recorded history. Napoleon wins. Technically, the Russians withdraw. But Napoleon, normally so decisive, The man who shattered the Prussians at Jena in a single morning hesitates. His generals beg him to release the Imperial Guard for a final crushing blow. He refuses. He is cautious. He is uncharacteristically uncertain. Military historians have debated this for 2 centuries. Why did Napoleon hold back the Guard at Borodino? Why didn't he deliver the killing blow? Consider the context. Napoleon is sick at Borodino. Contemporary accounts describe him as lethargic, with a heavy cold or fever. His decision-making is noticeably different from his peak. He has watched his army melt from 600,000 to fewer than 130,000 men in 75 days, without fighting a major battle. He knows the numbers. He feels the weight of what those numbers mean. His army is not the weapon it was in June. It is a weapon with a cracked blade. He enters Moscow 14 days later, September 14th, 1812. The city is burning. The Russians have set fire to their own capital, rather than surrender it intact. Napoleon rides into a city of smoke and ash and embers. He sets up command in the Kremlin. He waits for the Tsar to send a delegation. He waits for surrender. He waits 35 days. No delegation comes. And in the camps around Moscow, the typhus and the paratyphoid and the relapsing fever continue their invisible work. Soldiers who entered Russia in June as healthy, fed, motivated fighting men are now skeletal, feverish, plagued by lice, consuming whatever they can find. The army that reaches Moscow is already a ghost of the army that crossed the Niemen. On October 19th, Napoleon gives the order to leave Moscow. The retreat begins. And the real dying, the dying that everyone remembers, the dying of the history books, is about to begin. October 19th, 1812, the Grand Armée leaves Moscow. Roughly 100,000 men begin the march west. They carry everything they have looted from Moscow: silver plates, paintings, mirrors, furs, clocks. They are already weakened. Many are already sick. They move at the speed of exhaustion. The first snow falls on November 4th. The temperature begins to drop. -20 Celsius, -30. The Berezina River is partially frozen, but not frozen solid. Bridges must be built under fire from pursuing Cossacks. Men fall into the water. The current takes them. This is the image that survives. This is the retreat that enters legend. The frozen Grand Armée staggering through the snow, dead horses frozen in the road, men dropping where they stand, Cossacks riding out of the dark to take the stragglers. This is what General Winter looks like. But here is what the myth obscures. The men who die in the snow in November and December are not the healthy soldiers who crossed the Niemen in June. They are the survivors of a disease catastrophe that already killed tens of thousands before the temperature dropped. The men the winter kills are already malnourished, already weakened, already immunocompromised, many already carrying active infections that the cold now accelerates into death. The winter does not defeat the Grand Armée. The winter kills an army that was already destroyed. The distinction is not a historical footnote. It is the entire point. Consider the numbers with this in mind. June 24th, 600,000 men cross the Niemen. July 25th, the Central Army of 265,000 is down to 185,000. Disease and desertion. No major battle. August 25th, 160,000 remain in the Central Army. Disease. September 7th, Borodino. The battle costs 30,000 French casualties in one day. September 14th, Napoleon enters Moscow with fewer than 100,000 effective troops. October 19th, retreat begins with roughly 100,000, many of them already sick. December, a few thousand reach the Niemen going west. The winter phase, the part everyone remembers, kills perhaps 50,000 to 80,000 men. a catastrophe in itself. But the disease phase, June through October, before a single winter casualty, kills at minimum 150,000 and possibly far more. Disease does not just kill more men than the cold. Disease kills more men than every battle of the entire campaign combined. And disease is not passive. It is not an act of nature like frost and ice. Disease is the consequence of decisions, of supply chain failures, of contaminated water sources along the march route, of the impossibility of maintaining hygiene for 600,000 men moving across hundreds of kilometers without sufficient infrastructure. The logistics system that looked perfect on paper collapses in practice. Wagons break down on roads that aren't roads, just tracks in the Polish and Russian clay. Supply depots that were supposed to sustain the army cannot keep pace with the speed of the advance. The army outmarches its own food supply in the first weeks. Men begin foraging, drinking from streams contaminated by dead animals and human waste from the columns ahead of them. Paratyphoid moves through contaminated water like fire through dry grass. The lice never stop moving. The body louse thrives at human body temperature, 37 degrees Celsius. When a soldier dies, the lice on his body feel the temperature dropping. They leave. They walk on to the nearest living body. They carry their rickettsia and their Borrelia with them. The mass grave in Vilnius contains the bones of men who died within weeks of each other, all carrying multiple pathogens, a biological archive of cascade infection. The retreat from Moscow does not create the disease catastrophe. It accelerates a catastrophe that is already months old. But there is one more consequence, one that extends far beyond the borders of Russia, far beyond December 1812, far beyond Napoleon and his marshals and his dreams of empire. The retreating French army does not carry the disease inside Russia. It carries it west. The Grand Armée retreats. The lice retreat with it. Through Poland, through Prussia, through Germany. The sick and the dying and the already dead leave a trail of rickettsia and Borrelia and salmonella across half of Europe. The soldiers who survive, the few thousand who stumble back across the Niemen in December 1812, bring their diseases home. They bring their lice home. They collapse into the arms of their families and their communities and their countries. The typhus epidemic radiates outward from the Russian campaign for years afterward. This is the cascade effect that nobody teaches. Napoleon loses the campaign, but the pathogens do not lose. They find new hosts. The epidemic spreads through the Eastern European populations that the army passes through on the retreat. Vilnius, the same city where Napoleon set up his headquarters in July, becomes a mass grave. The soldiers buried beneath its streets in the 1990s construction dig are the direct evidence of a biological event that continues long after the battle ends. The political consequences are immediate and permanent. Napoleon returns to Paris in December 1812 in secret, ahead of his dying army, because he knows what the numbers mean. He knows the instrument of his power is broken. He spends 1813 rebuilding, new conscripts, new cavalry, new everything. But the veterans are gone. The trained, experienced, hardened soldiers who carried the knowledge of 15 years of victory are buried in Russian fields and Polish roads and Lithuanian mass graves. The new army that faces the coalition at Leipzig in October 1813 is different. It fights bravely. But it is not the Grand Armée. Napoleon loses Leipzig. He abdicates in April 1814. This chain of events, from the louse-borne epidemic of summer 1812 to the abdication of April 1814, takes 22 months. The physical distance from the Niemen crossing to Napoleon's exile on Elbe is enormous. But the causal chain is direct. A bacterium carried by a louse, multiplying in the seams of 600,000 wool coats, destroys the military capacity that maintains the entire Napoleonic order. There is a broader lesson in this, one that transcends Napoleon and 1812. Riketsia Prowazeki will appear again in the Crimean War in the 1850s. It will devastate the Eastern Front in World War I, killing more Russian and Eastern European civilians than the fighting itself. In Serbia alone during World War I, 150,000 people die of typhus in a single year. The disease returns wherever armies march, wherever hygiene collapses, wherever lice find warm bodies in sufficient numbers. The pathogen has no allegiances. It does not distinguish between emperor and private, between conqueror and conquered. And here is what the 2025 DNA study from the Institut Pasteur adds to this picture. The 4 diseases found in the Vilnius mass grave, typhus, trench fever, paratyphoid, relapsing fever, were not isolated outbreaks. They were co-infections, multiple pathogens attacking simultaneously, synergistically, in bodies already broken by exhaustion and starvation. The combined effect is greater than any single disease alone. A soldier with relapsing fever is more vulnerable to typhus. A soldier with paratyphoid is more likely to die from relapsing fever. The pathogens work together, though they have no intention, no coordination, no awareness. This is what 600,000 men walk into in June 1812. Not a single killer. A biological storm, and they walk into it wearing wool coats full of lice, drinking from contaminated streams, sleeping in the same barns where the men before them slept, on the same straw where the men before them left their lice. The Grand Armée does not freeze to death in the Russian winter. The Grand Armée walks into a biological catastrophe in the Russian summer. The winter is the final act of a tragedy that has been running for 6 months. Think about what this means for how we read Napoleon's final years. Every assumption about what was possible in 1813, whether Napoleon could have held Germany, whether the coalition could have been negotiated with, whether history could have bent differently, depends on that army that marched east in June 1812 and never came back. That army was not defeated by a general, not by a czar, not by a season. It was defeated by something that fit under a thumbnail. June 24th, 1812. 600,000 men. They cross the Niemen River in the morning light. The bridges flex under the weight of history. Napoleon watches from the bank. He believes he is watching the instrument of his final, greatest victory. What he is watching is the largest biological catastrophe in modern military history, marching toward its own destruction. The myth says the Russian winter killed the Grand Armée. The truth, confirmed now by the bones in Vilnius, by the DNA in the teeth of men dead for 2 centuries, by the numbers that Napoleon's own dispatches tried to soften, is that the Grand Armée was already dying in the heat of summer, already being dismantled by pathogens that moved faster than cavalry, that required no cannon, that recognized no military genius. 800,000 people die in the 1812 Russian campaign. French, Russian, Polish, German, Italian, Lithuanian civilians caught in the corridor of devastation. The numbers are so large they lose meaning. But in each tooth, in each fragment of bone preserved in the soil of Vilnius, in each ancient DNA sequence extracted by a scientist 200 years later, there is one life, one person who woke up one morning in the summer of 1812 and did not know that an invisible thing was already inside them. Napoleon is a military genius, one of the greatest commanders in the history of warfare. He never had a strategy for Riketsia Prowazeki. Nobody did. And that is the truth that every history of 1812 should begin with. Not the snow, not the burning of Moscow, not the Tsar's refusal to surrender, but the louse in the wool coat. The flea-sized catastrophe that crossed the Niemen in the seams of 600,000 uniforms on a warm summer morning. The thing too small to see. The thing that rewrote the map of Europe. History is not only made by emperors and armies and battles. Sometimes history is made by what no emperor can command, no general can outmaneuver, and no army can survive. Sometimes the most powerful force in human history fits under a thumbnail and travels west. Here is the question worth sitting with. If the world's greatest military commander, with the most sophisticated army ever assembled, could be destroyed from the inside by a pathogen he couldn't see, what does that tell us about every system we believe is invincible today? Leave your answer in the comments. This conversation is worth having.